Hi, I'm Jamie Catania of Shovel the Sidewalk. We're a marketing firm in Buffalo, New York, building brands and creating advertising for small businesses. And we utilize the power of authentic storytelling. That's why we created Sidewalk Talk. It's a way for thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts to share stories of inspiration, information, and education, especially to those that are living through this crazy time that we're experiencing right now. And today I have on the show assistant linebacker coach for the University at Buffalo, Mike Peters. Mike Peters, thanks for being on the show. How's everything going?
I'm doing great, man. Trying to make the best of the situation. It's tough times, but it's a great opportunity to be on your podcast today. We've known each other for a while, man. It's kind of crazy to see how things come full circle.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, man. I know you have a very interesting story in the sense that you played sports your whole life. You always had that innate ability to be able to just be a natural leader. Even with the older kids, I remember when we played high school football, and you became a coach. So I'm hoping you would share right now with the audience your journey to become a coach.
It's interesting because when I was in high school and we knew each other in high school playing football together at Kemmer West here in Buffalo, I was also coaching for a company called Kids Play, which is based out of Kenmore, and I was coaching soccer and flag football and hockey. And at the time, I didn't really know that I was going to wind up being a college football coach. I just knew that I loved teaching. I love impacting kids. So I wound up having an opportunity to go on and play college football. I went to Lake Forest College in Chicago, Division III school. I wanted to get away. I wanted a different experience. And in those 4 years, I met some people all over the country, Texas, Florida, California, made friends, relationships with people that I never would have thought when I was in high school that I would have had the opportunity to do. And in those 4 years too, I've also realized that in those 4 years of college, I realized that I really wanted to make an impact in what I was going to do. I didn't want to go in and just go and be, working at a desk, and nothing against doing that. I really wanted to make sure that I was going to make a lasting impact. So, after that fourth year at Lake Forest, I had my fun. I had a great time. And, Coach Catanzaro, my head coach, he was a tough love coach. But he really had your best interest in mind. And in my senior year, my spring, he asked me to come out and coach the receivers, which is what I played receiver. Asked me to coach the receivers for that spring. And it was kind of an interesting dynamic because when you're a player and you're trying to coach guys that you played with and that you hang out with on the weekend, it's tough. But in that spring, I really realized that if you can coach your friends and you can find a way to connect with them and show them that you have their best interest in mind when you're coaching them, that you can do this for a living. So I felt really passionate about it when I was doing it for free, and I talked to my head coach. And I was like, "Hey, this is what I want to do. This is really what I want to do." And I really had one opportunity. It was one opportunity I had with a former Lake Forest College player, Coach Langhoff, who's now at Beloit College in Wisconsin, as the defensive coordinator. And I went to McMurray College in Southern Illinois, which is small school. It was 500 kids at this school, man. 90 kids on the football team. So when I went there, um, I wore many hats, whether it be with academics, coaching the receivers, head equipment guy, washing jerseys on Saturday nights. You had your hands in everything. So when I was doing that, I was like, man, I didn't know this is what coaching was. Which and I'll get into that in a little bit here. Is I think coaching is a little misperceived of all the stuff that goes into it. It's about 10% of the job is actually on-field coaching. A lot of it's mentoring and stuff. But anyway, so that first year, I was only at McMurray for 10 months. It was in the middle of Southern Illinois. I met a lot of great people, but I'm a city guy, and I really wanted to be back in Chicago. So I had some friends that I also got into coaching. One of them was the defensive line graduate assistant at Concordia University, Chicago. It's about 9 miles west of downtown Chicago. I wound up having an interview there for the receivers for the receiver graduate assistant coach. So I got to add the interview. I did well enough. I got the job, and I wound up working for a guy named James Kiernan, and one of my mentors to the day, like one of the best guys in the industry for sure. He'll do anything for you, if you work hard for him. So I worked for him for 3 years, from 2015 to 2017. Was a receiver GA. coached a bunch of great kids, made some really good relationships there. And during that time, man, like, and we'll talk, I know you want to talk about philosophy, we'll get into that in a little. During that time, I kind of figured out who I wanted to be as a coach. I felt like those first 2 years, I was just going through the motions, teaching the plays, teaching the fundamentals, wins and losses. And then you realize, like, what do you bring to the table that's beyond that? Like, what do you bring into the guys, like, post football field? And I started reading books, man, like, started really getting into, like, what can I do to make myself better for the guys? Reading books, a bunch of them that I can give you, but, so during those last 2 years at Concordia, I've really, like, kind of expanded where I wanted to see myself in this career. And I read a book called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson. Probably impacted my life the most of any book. It was just timing. A lot of reading books is about timing. And I've gone back and read that book again, and it hit me differently. So that's a part of my philosophy too. But the biggest thing with that was, like, the book talked about, you know, have God-sized dreams, so that, it's not just you, something else has to impact you. So my point is, I started reaching out to coaches in the industry at the Division I level, that were, where I wanted to be. Reached out to probably 125 coaches. There's 128 programs in the country at FBS level. So FCS coaches are what I reached out to. My point being this: I was trying to get and seek knowledge from these guys and how they got there, what their path was. Try to do my research on, how they got to where they wanted to be. And I only got a few responses, probably got 10 to 15 responses. But one of those responses had led to an opportunity at the University of Buffalo. Rob Ianello, who's the associate head coach at UB and receivers coach right now, mentor of mine, great guy. And he allowed me to come into UB when I was working at Concordia over a summer break. And we talked receiver play, and, really soaked up a lot from him. And during that 3-4 hour time, like, he had asked me when my graduation date was for Concordia, and I was like, there's no way he's, like, actually going to call me when I graduate. Well, fast forward some time, he reached out to me in December or January of 2017. It would have been 2018 in January, but he called me. I'm like, and I'm in my kitchen and I look at my phone and it's Rob Ianello. I'm like, he's actually calling me. So I picked up the phone, and he didn't know I was back in Buffalo. He thought I was still in Chicago. So I wound up having an opportunity to come in and interview for a position on staff. And, I was super nervous. Like, imagine going into, you're from Buffalo, you go into the building there and you're trying to make your best impression, and, wound up being offered an opportunity to work with the running backs as what's called a quality control coach. And, different for me. I got out of my comfort zone right away. I've always done receivers. So I worked with the running backs in 2018 season, spring of 2018, and fall of 2018. And it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, I don't know who follows University of Buffalo football, but 2018 we won 10 games, went to the MAC championship game, had a tough loss, and then we went to the Dollar General Bowl, tough loss again to Troy. But, like, it's just that season I was working for nothing. And I guess I want to try to explain, like, it's worth it. Like, if you really want to do it, like, you kind of got to pay your dues in this, career. And it was worth it, working a job on the side at a restaurant, hustling, doing Uber, doing Lyft, selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Like, however, got to pay the bills. So, and then after that year, I was able to move into an off the field role as basically it's an academic role where it's called the director of player development. So I was able to work with the guys and help them make sure they're on track for graduating, on track for keeping not just a good GPA, but above our standard, trying to make sure that we're, taking the next step. And then I was in that role for 4 months. And then I was fortunate enough, Coach Leopold was offered me a position to work with the linebackers. Now, everyone's kind of got that crossword of, like, hey, I've never done that before. Like, am I going to be able to succeed in that? And I never coached defense before, and I'm just being transparent with everyone. I've been a receiver my whole life, coached the running backs in 18, and then, had an opportunity to really learn the other side of football. And what I was able to learn is that if you throw yourself into something like that, you take that leap of faith, and you trust yourself and you trust the people you're around and you really try to soak up information. It's probably the best thing that I've done in my 6 years of coaching so far is going to defense and really learning through a different perspective. So since April of 2019, I've been the linebackers graduate assistant coach. Essentially, I'm the assistant to the linebacker coach, Chris Simpson, who's been a great mentor to me as well. So I've been as the linebacker graduate assistant at UB since April of 2019. And then this past season was awesome. We had the #1 ranked defense in the MAC, #9 ranked defense in the country. We have all of them basically coming back besides a few guys. And I'm just excited. It's just a great opportunity to be home and do what I love. And, that's a little bit of, there's some more details to the story, but I just want to make it as short as possible for you, Jamie.
No, that's great, man. And I definitely want you to go more into your philosophies of what it means to be a good coach, because as you know, whether you're coaching, younger kid, when you were a younger kid being coached, you had the coaches that screamed at you that didn't really show any empathy, and then you had the other coaches that they got your back, they held you up when times were tough. What's your mindset when you're coaching people, especially those that are like closer to your age?
So, Jamie, what's cool about the position I'm in right now is, so the first 4 years of when I was in coaching, I was running a room. So I was the lead guy that was coordinating, watching film and giving tests and, giving feedback. And when I got to UB, you go from the Division III football level to FBS. And as a quality control coach and as a GA, like, you're taking the back seat. So I've been able to really sit back and watch numerous position coaches, how they run a room and how they are able to really, trigger their guys to go and to grind, to go and to get through a practice and get better. And that 1% every day we talk about it at UB. It's, we talk about this. We talk about this is the difference, every day. Show up like this is the difference in a game, win or loss. We've been there. We've been in the 1-point losses, and so having that mindset. But to philosophy wise, man, it's that these past 2 years have changed how I see how you really need to be like water. You got to adapt. You got to be adaptable to your guys because each player is different. Each player comes from a different background. Each player has come from a different coaching staff in high school, whether they were, glorified or they had a coach that really got on them. But when you come to our program at UB, Coach Live really does a great job of making sure that the guys we bring in are guys that fit our program, guys that want to work, guys that might be an underdog, have been an underdog, didn't get that Power 5 offer, and have come in and really worked hard and been all in on it, not just 90%, 110%. Jared Patterson's our starting running back, and James Patterson, his twin brothers, is our middle linebacker. And I worked with the running backs 2018 and work for the linebackers right now. And those two feed off each other, and they're on different sides of the ball, so they're always leveling up. But just philosophy wise, like, just to get back what you're touching on, for me, how I see it is you have to build relationships. You have to be principle centered. And I talked about reading books, and there's a book by Stephen Covey. All of his books have been really, really good that I read so far. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Principle Centered Leadership. You have to be able to have standards, and you can't let those waver, no matter the player and how good they are, because at the end of the day, like, your trust throughout the whole room, if you're coaching 15 guys, if you let one thing slip for the guy that is playing most of the snaps, and then the guy that's not playing at all, he does something similar, it's kind of tough to have the trust and the respect, and having their best interest in mind too, having conversations beyond football. For me, and a lot of the coaches in our staff, like, building relationships that are beyond the field have transcended to success on the field. So when we talk about relationships and we talk about what are you doing outside of football to get better, the players know that it's all in their best interest. The best part about that academic role, Jamie, was that was the first time since being at UB I was able to sit down with pretty much every player on the offense and really get to know them, like, where, like, background, what gets you motivated, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, questions like that. And then when you ask those type of questions, you're able to really dig deeper on the field and say, hey, where you want to be, like, this is not getting you there. You told me 5 years from now you want to be, whether it be in the NFL. Well, those actions aren't going to get you to where your destination that you say you want to be. So, I mean, it's really about relationships. I'd say I'm a relationship centered coach. Like, if you got to be able to build the relationships and find a way to get to that next level for that potential. And that's not just football. I think if you're in an office setting, like, you need to really get to know the people that are in your office, because if you want to get the best out of them and you want them to work for a common goal, you have to be able to know what gets them going and why they do things. A lot of people say, what's your why? Eric Thomas is a motivational speaker, and maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it might even be longer than that. When I was in college, his videos started becoming popular, and the "what's your why" thing really hit home with me. Like, what's my why? It's like my family, my brother. So, like, I do this, like, when stuff gets hard, working long hours, and work 15-hour days, sometimes longer in the season. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the purpose? What gets you out of bed? So, like, talking to your, whether it be employees or your players or your other coaches you're working with, like, what gets you going? Like, what gets you going on the first pull? Coach K, our OC guy I works for with the running backs, he always talks to our running backs about, let's go on the first pull, like a lawnmower. Like, when you're starting up a lawnmower, first pull, like, there should be no second pull. Like, come to practice and get going on the first pull. And it should be the same way. When you show up and work, you should be enthused, you should be ready to go. And if you're not enthused, you owe it to your teammates to show you that you're enthused, because they're here to work on the common goal. So some days you have a bad day, and some days you're going through stuff off the field. And I think that's something that, a quote that I also took from Coach K is, if you're not enthused, you better show you're enthused, and fake it until you really get into it. And then people feed off that. So, just philosophy wise, Jamie, I'd say that's really wraps it up. I think that, being a mentor, to your players, but not only, like, anyone that seeks out, mentorship, like, don't pass up the guy that hits you up in your Twitter DMs, or, give them a few minutes of your time, because you never know if that guy's going to be the next head coach, of the LA Rams. I don't know how much you're following, NFL football, but Sean McVay was the youngest head coach hired, and he was like 32, and I'm sure, and there's guys that work for him that are 50, so you don't ever know, who's going to be the guy that gets his break. So for me, like, I do try to take advantage of guys that are, trying to get better. And if you see that and guys are genuine about reaching out for time, like, I'm all about it. I think it's awesome, because, like I told you before, how I started, washing jerseys on Saturday nights after games in the middle of Southern Illinois in a town of 6,000. Like, we all start somewhere. Everyone's got their humble beginnings. And for me, I like when guys that are at the Division III level or D2, FCS, hey, like, I want to pick your brain on some stuff. I think that shows a lot about, their character and where they want to be in the profession. So I'd say that kind of wraps up the philosophy thing. I'm sure I can go on for hours, but
For sure. I mean,
yeah.
you're giving back, because there's people that have done that for you to get
Correct.
to where you're at. You weren't afraid to ask for help, and they gave you the time, and that's what you're doing right now. You're opening yourself up to those that may want to be in a similar position as you, that you're a resource for them. You're going to give your time to give your best advice, so they don't have to repeat maybe the same mistakes, and they can go on the road to success. You're also right now going for your second master's degree. I'm hoping you could also share. We're going to wrap this up shortly.
Yeah.
How do you maintain this lifestyle of not only being a coach, but you got a life. So how are you doing all this right now? What's your advice to those that are in school right now? They're also working. Share your secret.
Find time. There's so many little pockets where we say we don't have time, and you gotta prepare. You have to sit down and you have to look at your week ahead on a Sunday, just like everyone's meal prepping and stuff, which I'm sure I can do a better job of. But I try to look at my week as a whole, and I try to say, okay, like, what is coming ahead? What do I got to prepare for? What assignments and stuff? Now, school-wise, man, I know I can do better. It's tough with this job, just because in the fall and even in the spring, we have essentially 2 seasons. We have our season in the fall, starts in August, goes through November. And then we have our spring season, which is, we have 15 practices. And with this career, like there's turnover, there's guys that leave for other jobs, and the slack has to be picked up. You can't look left or right. You just got to get it done. The job has to get done, just like it was if you had everyone on your staff. So for, there's no secret to it, man. It's just, you got to figure it out. You got to get up early and you got to stay up late. You do have to get your sleep. You have to try to get the quality sleep that you need. But I'd say the biggest thing is just asking for help. That's swallowing your pride, and, talking to your professors and saying, hey, this is kind of what's going on. This is what I'm balancing. And some will be understanding and some won't. Some will just say, figure it out. But if you don't swallow your pride and try to figure a plan out with that professor, hey, this is what I have going on. This is, maybe I'm working this many hours, or, I'm not able to submit stuff on a Wednesday, but I can submit it on a Friday, having some flexibility and understanding. If you're going through the same situation as me, you're going for your master's and you're working full time, the planning is for sure important, but make sure that you're doing something that you really are passionate about. If you're going back for your master's, my first master's was in sports administration. I got that from Concordia University, Chicago, graduated in 17. Right now I'm in educational studies. So it's online, which helps. But it's also tough because you have to be really strategic about it. You have to be intentional with your daily actions. So, I trying to catch up on some stuff right now to finish out this semester. But, I just realized the one thing I didn't touch on philosophy wise is like being intentional. A lot of people, even myself, even recently, as of 6 months ago, I'd say I was always, shooting from the hip. I was always kind of on the go. And I didn't really have a plan. I was just trying to put out fires as they came. I was being reactive instead of being proactive. And, the more proactive you can be and, looking ahead at future fires, the more productive you'll be. So, getting ahead of the curve is something that has helped with organization and stuff like that. So I'd say that'd be a huge, tool for people, is just, really try to look not just a week ahead, look 2 months ahead. Okay, how do I make my life better by doing, maybe one thing, every day, that is going to add up, that compound interest. So it adds up. That's for sure.
All valuable information. Mike, thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I think, for those that want to reach out to you, maybe the best way, LinkedIn, right? Just search Mike Peters.
Yeah, LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter. It's UB_Coach Peters. Yeah, I mean, anyone that wants to, talk, I got a bunch of, between books and, young coaches, if you want to reach out, I'm more than happy to talk. With this pandemic, a little more time than normal. We'd be just finishing up spring ball if we were still in season or up at the campus, but working remotely, working ahead to try to get ready for the fall and the 2020 season. But any help I can offer anyone, please feel free to reach out through LinkedIn or Twitter. We'll chop it up on some football and some philosophy stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. For those listening, thank you for listening. You can stream all of our podcasts by visiting shovelthesidewalk.com. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other streaming players. If you or somebody that has a story to share, feel free to reach out. We're always open to having people sharing stories of inspiration, motivation, and education. Mike, thanks again for being on the show. And this has been Sidewalk Talk.